Hi. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Raz. So today, hi, Metal. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different to our normal streams. We got something very special today. There's only 2,000 of these in the whole world. Hassel, welcome, welcome. It is comfy time. We're going to be doing something Warhammer related, but it's not going to be modeling or painting like we normally do. We're going to be going into the new book that we were really lucky enough to get one of the very few copies of in the world. It's about the Primarch of the Dark Angels chapter, or Legion. Thank you so much for the 1 year devs. We've got a bit of a slightly different setup today. That was just my phone, that's fine. So yes, the Dark Angels were the... It was the chapter and army I started playing with... It was the army I started playing Warhammer with my dad. I shared that army with him for a long time, up until he passed. So I'm very, very, very kind of glad that they're getting a new beginning. They used to talk about the lion coming back since I was a kid. It was like this, in the lore, it was this really big prophecy that one day he would come back. And finally, he is back. Thank you, Metal, for letting me know. The model isn't actually frozen. I forgot to turn my tracking on. But that should be fine now. So, we're going to be taking a look at this together. We're going to be reading through the very first chapter together, or maybe a bit more than that, depending on how short or long it is. Thank you so much for the 7 months, Mimikyu, and Davs for the 13. The time really does just fly by. Gato, come on my lap. Come on. Just gonna migrate you here. So yeah, I wasn't sure I'd like start doing Dark Angels again, but I feel like it's a new start for them, and so it's gonna be like a new start for me as well. Scuff for the Scuff God. Yes, always. Always. So, I suppose I've never done an unboxing video before. It comes in a very, very fancy box, I feel like. It's got a number on it, so I'm guessing there's only 2,000 of these in the world. I'm assuming that this means we've got number 261. Only 2,000 of this book in the whole world. So I was very lucky. There's some different versions of it, but this version is special. So let's have a look. Oh my word. So that's the box. That's the box. We'll pop that away for now. It's got a little seal on it. There's extra wrapping. The sides are all green. Rarer than your will to live. Oh my. Do I want to break this sticker? I think I do. I think this is like a seal. I'm gonna be very careful not to break anything. Ooh. Oh god, that is really pretty. I saw pictures of it and knew it was going to be really fancy. Seal that funny water cat. Not quite. God, it's got this kind of fabric sewn texture on the surface as well. It's really pretty. It's all these lovely inlays and textures on it. So this book is called The Lion, Son of the Forest. So the lion was one of the primarchs of the Dark Angels, which is one of the first of the Emperor's 20 sons. And at the end of the Horus Heresy, he returned home and was very reflective about the way he dealt with things, because things did not go well for him. And when he returned home, his sons attacked him. And he went to find out what was going on. He fought his way and to meet Luther, who was his adoptive father. And he couldn't kill him, even though he was a traitor. And when that happened, he was attacked with sorcerous power and has been in a coma for 10,000 years, effectively. And this book tells the story of that moment, I believe. I've not read it, so I don't really know. There's a little quote on the back. I failed my father. I fear I also failed my brothers. I do not wish to fail my sons. God, this is such a pretty book. It looks like something that you'd find in a museum, doesn't it? God, even the pages are really nicely textured. Should I add the other camera? Would the other camera make sense? Ooh. Camera. Where is the other camera? But yeah, I was very lucky. If you go on eBay and try and find this, because it sold out in literally 5 minutes after it was put up. But if you go on eBay, you can see this thing going for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Got some art prints as well from our line set. So this is the character here. He stands up to Angron, the Demon Primarch. So let's have a look. And let's have a look at this together. Signed by the author Mike Brooks, which is very cool. I was right, it's number 261 of 2000. I'm thoroughly thrilled with this. And this is the cover art that you would see. This is the cover art that you would see on the normal version of the book. God, it's really gorgeous art though, isn't it? I wonder just what's going to be like. Mr. Lithium, hello! Welcome back! Welcome back! But yes, I'm incredibly happy that I got this book. I'm really excited to see what the story is going to be like moving forward. So, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Black Library publication, all the normal stuff, a list of potential books that might be relevant. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, 1,000,000 worlds stand against the dark. Yet, he is a rotting carcass, the carrion lord of the Imperium, held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology, and the 1,000 souls sacrificed each day so that his may continue to burn. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have cries of anguish and sorrow drowned by the laughter of thirsting gods. This is a dark and terrible era, where you will find little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace among the stars, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Ah, it's got a list of the characters to start out with. So we, of course, have the lion, a bunch of dark angels. There's a lot of dark angels. A whole bunch of... loads of them! Oh my word. Okay. That's cool. There's a faction called the 10,000 Eyes. There are normal humans. Oh, Commander Dante's in this. I guess that makes sense. Part 1. For 100 centuries, the fluffy-pawed empress has sat immobile atop her gaming chair. She is the master of Twitch-kind, for whom 1,000 donations are sacrificed every day, that she may never truly die. There is no peace among ourselves, for in the grim darkness of the 21st millennium, there is only pause. That's hilarious, Jajillians. Yes. Yes. Part 1. Awakening. The river sings silver notes, a perpetual chaotic babble in which a fantastically complex melody seems to hang. Tantalizing, just out of reach of the listener. He could spend an eternity here trying to find the hearts of it, without ever succeeding, yet still not consider the time wasted. The sound of water over stone. The interplay of energy and matter creates a quiet symphony that is both unremarkable and unique. He does not know how long he's been here, just listening, nor, he realizes, does he know where here is. The listener becomes aware of himself in stages, like a sleeper passing from the deepest, darkest depths of slumber. Through the shallows of semi-consciousness, where thought swirls in confusing eddies, and then into the light. First comes the realization that he is not the song of the river, that he is in fact separate from it and listening to it. Then sensation dawns, and he realizes he is sitting on the river's bank. If there is a sun or suns, then he cannot see them through the branches of the trees overhead, and the mist that hangs heavily in the air. But there is still light enough for him to make out his surroundings. The trees are massive and mighty, with great trunks that could not be fully encircled by 1, 2, perhaps even half a dozen people's outstretched arms. Their rough, cracked bark pockmarks them with shadows, as though the trees themselves are camouflaged. The ground beneath their branches is fought over and by tough shrubs, sturdy, twisted, thorny things strangling each other in the contest for space and light. Like children unheeded at the feet of adults. The earth in which they grow is dark and rich, and when the listener digs his fingers into it, it smells of life and death, and other things besides. It is a familiar smell, although he cannot say from where or why. His fingers, he realizes, as they penetrate the ground, are armoured. His whole body is armoured, in fact, encased in a great suit of black plates with the faintest hint of dark green. This is a familiar sensation too. The armour feels like a part of him, an extension, as natural as the shell of any crustacean that might lurk in the nooks and crannies of the river in front of him. He leans forward and peers down into the still water next to the bank, sheltered from the main flow by an outcropping just upstream. It becomes an almost perfect mirror surface, as smooth as a dream. The listener does not recognize the face that looks back at him. It is deeply lined, as though a world of cares and worries had washed over it like the river water, scoring the marks of their passage into the skin. His hair is pale, streaked with blonde here and there, but otherwise fading into grey and white. The lower part of his face is obscured by a thick, full beard and moustache, leaving only the lips bare, It is a distrustful mouth, one more likely to turn downward in disapproval than quirk upwards in a smile. He raises one hand, the fingers still smeared with dirt, before his face. The reflection does the same. This is surely his face, but the sight sparks no memory. He does not know who he is, and he does not know where he is. For all that, it feels familiar. That being the case, there seems little point in remaining here. The listener gets to his feet, then hesitates. He cannot explain to himself why he should move, given the song of the river is so beautiful. However, the realization that his lack of knowledge has opened something inside him, a hunger which has not been there before. He will not be satisfied until he has his answers. Still, the river's song calls to him. He decides to walk along the bank, following the flow of the water and listening to it as he goes, since he does not know where he is. One direction is as good as any other. There is a helmet on the bank, next to where he was sitting. It is the same colour as his armour, with vertical slits across the mouth. Like firing slits in a wall, he picks it up and clamps it to his waist with a movement that feels instinctual. He does not know for how long he walks. Time is surely passing in that one moment, and in that one moment slips into another. And he can remember ones that came before and consider the concept of ones yet to come. But there is nothing to mark it. The light neither increases nor decreases, instead remaining an almost spectral presence which illuminates without revealing its source. Shadows lurk, but there is no indication as to what casts them. The walker is unperturbed. His eyes pierce those shadows, just as he can smell foliage, and he can hear the river. There is no soughing of wind in the branches, for the air is still, but the moist air carries the faint hooting, hollering calls of animals of some kind, somewhere in the distance. The river's course begins to flatten and widen. The walker follows it around in a bend, then it comes to a halt in shock. On the far bank stands a building. It is built of cut and dressed stone, a dark blue-grey rock in which brighter specks glitter. It is not immense. The surrounding trees tower over it. But it is solid. It is a castle of some kind, a fortress, intended to keep the unwanted out and whatever people and treasures lie within safe from harm. It is neither new and pristine, nor ancient in weathers. It looks as though it has always stood here, and always shall, and on the wide, calm water in front of it sits a boat. It is small, wooden, and unpainted. It is large enough for one person, and indeed, one person is sitting in it. The walker's eyes can make him out. Even at distance, he is old, not in the same way as the walker's face is. Time has not lined his features, it has ravaged them. His cheeks are sunken, his limbs are wasted. Skin that was once clearly rich chestnut now has an ashen patina. And his long hair is lifeless, dull, grey, and matted. However, that grey head supports a crown, little more than a circlet of gold, but a crown nonetheless. And his hands, swollen of knuckle and weak of grip, he holds a rod. The line is already cast into the water. Now he sits, hunched over as though in pain, a small, ancient figure in a small, simple boat. The walker does not stop to wonder why a king would be fishing in such a manner. He is aware of the context of such things, but he does not know from where, and they do not matter to him. Here is someone who might have some answers for him. "Greetings," he calls. His voice is strong, rich, and deep, although rough around the edges from age or disuse, or both. It carries across the water. The old king in the boat blinks, and when his eyes open again, they are looking at the water. What is this place? The walker demands. The old king blinks again. When his eyes open this time, they are focused on the water once more. It is as though the walker is not there at all. A dismissal of minimal effort. The walker discovers that he is not used to being ignored, nor does he appreciate it. He steps in the water, intending to wade across the river so the king cannot so easily dismiss him. He is unconcerned about the current. He is strong of limb and knows without knowing that his armor is waterproof, and that should he don his helmet, he will be able to breathe even if he is submerged. He has only gone a few steps in up to his knees when he realizes there are shadows in the water, large shadows that circle the small boat. Around and around. They do not bite on the line, nor do they capsize the craft in which the fisher sits, but either could be disastrous. Moreover, the walker realizes the king is wounded. The walker cannot see the wound, but he can smell the blood. A rich copperish tang tickles his nose. It is not a smell that delights him, but neither does he find it repulsive. It is simply a scent, one that he is able to pass and understand. The king is bleeding into the water, drip by drip. Perhaps that is what has drawn the shadows to this place. Perhaps they would have been here anyway. Some of the shadows start to peel away and head towards the walker. The walker is not a being to whom fear comes naturally, nor is he unfamiliar with the concept of danger. The shadows in the water are unknown to him, and move like predators. Come back to the bank. The walker whirls. A small figure on the land stands on the land, swathed in robes of dark green, so that it nearly blends into the background against which it stands. It is the size of a child, perhaps, but the walker knows it to be something else. It is a watcher in the dark. Come back to the bank, the watcher repeats. Although its communication can hardly be called a voice, there is no sound, merely a sensation inside the walker's head that imparts meaning. It feels increasingly urgent nonetheless. The walker realizes that he is not normally one to turn away from a challenge, but nor is he willing to ignore a watcher in the dark. It feels like a link, a connection to what came before, to what he should be able to remember. He wades back and steps up onto the bank. The approaching shadows hesitate for a moment, then circle away towards the king in his boat. They would destroy you, the watcher says. The walker understands that it is talking about the shadows. There are layers to the feelings in his head now. Feelings that are the mental aftertaste of the watcher's communication. Disgust lurks there, but also fear. Where is this place? The walker asks. Home. The walker waits, but nothing else is forthcoming. Moreover, he understands that there will not be. So far as the watcher is concerned, that is not simply all the information that is required, but all that is available to give. He looks out over the water, towards the king. The old man sits hunched over, rod in his hand, blood leaking from his wounds one drip at a time. Why does he ignore me? You did not ask the correct question. The walker looks around. The shadows in the water are still there, so it seems foolish to try to cross. However, he has seen no bridge over the river, nor another boat. He has no tools with which to build such a craft from the trees around him, and the knowledge of how to do so does not come easily to his mind. He is not like some of his brothers, for whom creation is natural. His brothers. Who are his brothers? Shapes flit through his mind as ephemeral smoke in a storm. He cannot get a grip. He cannot wrestle them into anything that makes sense, or anything onto which his reaching mind can latch. The peace brought about by the the song of the river is gone, and in its place is uncertainty and frustration. Nonetheless, the walker would not return to his former state. To knowingly welcome ignorance is not his way. He catches a glimpse of something pale, a long way off in the trees, but on his side of the river. He begins to walk towards it, leaving the river behind him. He'll always find it again. He knows its song. And making his way through the undergrowth, the plants are thick and verdant. But he is strong and sure. He ducks under spines, slaps aside strangling tendrils, reaching out for anything that passes, and avoids breaking the twigs, which would leak sap so corrosive it might damage even his armor. He does not wonder how he knows these things. The Watcher said that this was home. The Watcher itself has been left behind, but it keeps reappearing, stepping out of the edge of the shadows. It says nothing, not until the walker passes through a thicket of thorns and finally gets a clearer view of what he had seen. It is a building, or at least the roof of one. That is all he can see from here. It is a dome of beautiful pale stone, supported by pillars. Whereas before he had been finding his own route through the forest, now there is a clear path ahead. A route of short grass hemmed in on either side by bushes and tree trunks. It curves away, rather than arrowing straight towards the pale building, but the walker knows that is where it leads. Do not take that path, the Watcher cautions him. You are not yet strong enough. The walker looks down at this tiny creature, barely knee-high to him, then breathes deeply and rolls his shoulders within his armor. He presumes he had a youth, given he now looks old. Perhaps he was stronger then. Nonetheless, his body does not feel feeble. That is not the strength you will need. The walker narrows his eyes. You caution me against anything that might help me make sense of my situation. What would you have me do instead? Follow your nature. The walker breathes in again, ready to snap an answer, for he finds he is just as ill-disposed towards being denied as he is to being ignored. However, he pauses, then sniffs. He sniffs again. Something is amiss. He is surrounded by the deep, rich scent of the forest, which smells of both life and death. However, now his nose detects something else, a rancid undercurrent, something that is not merely rot or decay, for these are natural odours, but far worse, far more jarring. Corruption. This is something wrong, something twisted. It is something that should not be here, something that should not, in fact, exist at all. The walker knows what he must do now. He must follow his nature. The hunter steps forward and starts to run in pursuit of his quarry. Welcome, Demi. My acting mean. My fun. Welcome, third-rate senpai and Hinton. Hello. We move on to chapter 2. I hope you all have a lovely, comfy time with us reading this book. If you missed the very start, we are reading copy 261 of the limited edition, The Lion, Sons of the Forest, by Mike Brooks. There are only 2,000 of these in the world, and it is the kind of thing that really belongs in a museum. It's a wonderful thing, and I feel very lucky. I feel incredibly lucky. Big stretch. Let me get the bookmark before I do this. I'll mark my page, because it will surely close when I stretch. saw the forest, expected spooky survival time, get comfy story time instead. Excellent, this is good, I'm glad. Thank you, Hinton, I'll check it after the stream. The cover is very pretty. The back cover as well is fantastic. I feel like this very much informs of who the lion is now. It feels like it's sewn. Like I've never held a book like this. It's something very special. Very, very special. I will treasure it always. And thank you, Reaper Drone, for the gift sub. Oh my god, I've missed another gift sub. Someone has subbed, and I didn't see. We've had fun. Thank you so much for 13 months. My god, it's been a very long time. You've been a subscriber almost since the very start. In fact, since the very start. Well, if you have trouble reading, there's always Audible. I'm going to probably likely stream this whole book. Maybe not in one session. But we'll get through as much of it as we can before we need to go to work. But I will always finish with a complete chapter. I like doing readings. Book reading is fun. Cat, do not think about attacking that ribbon, Cat. Chapter 2. He flows over the ground, each step sure and certain and placed to perfection. Walking is second nature, and not something about which he has to think, but running awakens something within him. This sense of urgency, this sense of a goal towards which he is striving, it provides focus and clarity, and makes him not only more aware, but also more aware of his own awareness. He realizes that he perceives the forest in a new way, not as a homogeneous landscape, but as terrain, the ground on which tracks will be left, the plants that will show the signs of a body passing, the thickets where a predator might wait in ambush, and those in which lurking would lead only to becoming a meal for the plant itself. These things are as clear to him as words upon a page. This is his home, and nothing can hide from him here. The scent leads him onwards, as distinct as a wrong note in a symphony, and strengthening as he closes on it. The watcher is forgotten, as are the king in the boat and the shadows in the water. He is hunting beasts through the trees, just as he used to long ago, back before what? The hunter slows, his focus disrupted for a moment by another flash of something that is not even memory, but perhaps the shadow of one. He does not remember what came before, but he remembers that there was something to remember, which is both welcoming and infuriating. All he knows is that he hunted like this in the past. He shakes himself. Memory will return when it returns, if it returns. For now, he still has a quarry to chase down. He presses on, still following the scent of corruption. The hunter is not certain when the forest begins to change character, for there was never before any way with which to mark the time except by counting his own breaths or heartbeats. However, at some point he becomes aware that the mist is thinning. The light around him has a source now, high up and to his left, and he can feel the heat of this sun upon his scalp. It is a thick heat, a wet heat, the type that reaches into the throat and threatens to clog the airways. The trees are different as well. They are still tall, still towering, but this is no longer a world of massive low-hanging branches. Now their crowns splay out far above him. Their trunks are bare apart from the climbing plants that seek to scale their neighbours to snatch a glimpse of light for themselves. The air is alive with the chittering of insects, and the hunter can no longer hear the song of the river. He pauses and reaches down to the ground once more, this time coming up with a fistful of mouldering leaves. They carpet the ground, thick and brown. They do not easily give up the prints of those who have passed over them before, not like the soft earth does, the tracker's friend. The hunter does not know where he is now, any more than he truly knew where he was before. But he knows that this is somewhere else. He is no longer home. The scent of corruption is still strong, though. Stronger, even. The hunter is drawn forwards, pressing on through the new undergrowth. Purplish ferns, pale roots trailing down from above, hanging vines, and plants he does not know with broad glossy leaves, edged with spines. He does not feel the same connection to this forest. But he is closing on his quarry, and he will not lose it once he is this near, no matter his surroundings. There is movement up ahead. The hunter can hear the faint creaking of stems as his quarry passes through the brush. He begins to build a picture of what he is following. It is large, certainly, for it cannot avoid making some noise as it moves. It feels like a predator, too. Its movement sounds like his own, designed not to alert prey to its approach, rather than something going about its own business. He can smell the faint tang of offal and rotting meat, such as might be caught between the hunter's jaws or smeared across its snout when it has fed on a carcass. A large, dangerous predator. The hunter removes his helmet from where it is clamped to his belt, and, with a strange familiarity of movement, despite being unable to remember having ever done it before, lowers it onto his head. The helmet clicks into place, making an airtight seal, displays power up instantly, and the hunter finds himself looking at readouts detailing his armor's power reserves, the external temperature, humidity levels, and atmospheric composition, and even the day length of the world he is on. 18.54 hours, as estimated from the infinitesimal movement of the local star in the sky above him. Without knowing how he knows what to do, he blinks through the vision options available to him. Standard, polarized, infrared, thermal imaging, and so on. He settles on the standard vision. Everything has its place, but he will have no need of enhancements for this. He sets the air intakes to open, allowing himself to still experience the sense of this world, and moves back into the hunt. Even clad in his armor, thick though it is, he has no problem moving stealthily. The suit responds intuitively to him, as though it is a second skin. He does not pause to ponder this. It feels as natural as breathing. He inhales and detects the odor of his prey. There is no wind in this dense understory, so he has little concern about his own scent giving him away. He inhales again, double-checking. His armor feverishly analyzing his surroundings, offering up a breakdown of molecular concentrations and pheromone trails which overlays his vision like ghostly fluorescent trails. He is not mistaken. There is more than one predator, and they have split up, one to the left and right as he looks at it. The hunter scans the ground, but the leaf litter is as obstinate as before and refuses to divulge its secrets. Is he following two predators or more? Even his senses, sharp as though they are, have limits. Still, hesitation is not his way. He follows the trail that leads to his left, balancing speed with stealth. If he slays this corrupted beast, whatever it may turn out to be, he will need to do it quickly enough to then retrace his steps and pick up the scent of its packmates. He blinks a command, and the audio receptors on his helmet increase sensitivity, ready to warn him if anything chooses to hunt him while he is on the trail of his quarry. He does not hear clawed feet or muscled bodies converging on him through the undergrowth, but he does detect something else from up ahead. Voices. Human voices. Not the eerie sensation of the Watcher in the Dark's communication, where meaning suddenly arrived in his head, but true voices like his own. Not quiet, not stealthy, but broadcasting their position to all with ears to hear them. If the hunter is certain of anything, it is that his quarry has both ears, the ears to hear them, and the intention of doing harm. He breaks into a sprint, all his own stealth forgotten as he smashes through tangling underbrush. He hurdles the giant trunk of a fallen tree just in time to hear a scream and see a monstrous shape, sheathed in scales of iridescent green, spring towards a huddle of humans. The hunter launches himself into a leap, a black armored arrow powered by superhuman muscle and sinew. He strikes the beast in the flank with his knee and feels the rib bones the width of his wrist crack from the force of the impact. The beast sprawls onto its side with a roaring scream, its pounce cut short, and the hunter has no time to finish the job before the undergrowth rustles and two more creatures emerge on the far side of the humans. There are 3 humans, 2 adults and a child. All 3 are unkempt, dressed in ragged clothes, and 2 adults sport growths of facial hair which appear to owe more to lack of grooming opportunity than to cultural significance or personal choice. The child is prepubescent, of as yet indeterminable gender, with long straggly hair, and eyes wide and white in a dirty face. Thunder sees this within the space of a moment as he glances past them. The humans are weak, tired, and scared, of little value as allies in this struggle, and as likely to freeze in fear as they are to respond to instruction. He dismisses them and springs over their head. The predators are a different matter altogether. They each stand taller than a human at the shoulder, but the similarities between them taper off at that point. The one the hunter struck down to begin with had a scaled hide, but one of the others has purplish-green fur interspersed with patches of scales, and the third skin appears to have hardened into chitinous carapace in many places. Though they all have long jaws lined with sharp teeth, but one has additional tusks that protrude below its chin, and another has large ridged horns that curl back from above its eyes. The hunter comes down from his leap, and with his hands clasped together to form one giant fist, and lands them in a titanic blow directly towards those horns. The predator's head is driven down into the forest floor so fast that the rest of its body does not have time to keep up, and its rump is still standing as the hunter rolls away to turn towards the third creature. This one faces him and opens its mouth, but no roar of rage or aggression emerges. Instead, a long, thickly muscled tongue lashes out to cover the space between them, some 30 feet or more, and the tip engulfs the hunter's right hands with a hideous sucking noise. Strength means little without leverage. The hunter does not have time to set his feet before he is hauled off by the tongue and wrenched through the air towards the creature who has snarled him. He draws back his free fist, determined to turn this headlong flight into an attack. But he is smashed out of the air by a massive clawed paw the moment he can strike his blow. He is pinned face down on the ground, and he automatically shuts his helmet's air intake from inhaling dust or dirt. Then his concerns become more immediate, as the creature draws his hand into its mouth with its ensnaring tongue and bites down on the arm at the elbow. The force is tremendous, could have easily snapped a regular human in 2 at the waist. The hunter's armor withstands it, although red warning icons flash up into his vision to let him know how close it is to giving way. The beast shakes its head to and fro, trying to achieve through wrenching and tearing what it could not manage through sheer force alone, and nearly tears the hunter's shoulder out of its socket in the process. He grits his teeth, waits for half a second to get his timing right, and hauls his arm back out of the beast's jaws in the moment that it starts to shake its head in the other way, and its grip on his limb slackens ever so slightly. The hunter's arm scrapes free. The predator's teeth leave grooves in the smooth surface of his vambrace, then snap shut as the resistance disappeared. In doing so, they sever the creature's own tongue, which still envelops the hunter's fist. The beast screams in self-inflicted pain and lifts its paw from the hunter's back to claw its own mouth, from which the dark blood is leaking between its teeth. The hunter springs up, shaking the tongue tip loose. Without the muscle contraction to hold it in place, it is no more than a fleshy cylinder which flops wetly onto the forest floor. The beast lunges for him, at least 2 tons of flesh driving behind a fanged maw, which opens to engulf the hunter. This time, however, he has the chance to set himself. He spreads his arms wide and fingers close for a moment on the tips of its jaw. Just as he shifts his weight and twists his torso, his muscles tense, and the servers of his armor spring into action to support them. The hunter pivots and uses the beast's own momentum to send it spinning through the air into its horned companion, which is now rising to its feet after being stunned by the hunter's blow. So the 2 predators collide and collapse into a thrashing, howling pile of limbs and tails. All of this has taken perhaps 10 seconds since the hunter first leapt over the terrified humans. He has been aware of their shrieks and gasps as he struggled with the predators, but only now does he turn back to them. They are still where he left them, their arms full of sticks, not weapons, but firewood they have collected. They are small and weak, and unable to defend themselves against threats such as this. The hunter supposes that he might easily consider them pathetic. Perhaps he did once, in whatever existence he had before, if he had dwelled too long on the differences between him and them. Now he only sees lives that need his protection. He is strong and they are weak, and therefore he will lend them his strength until they no longer need it. The animal whose ribs he cracked is struggling back to its feet with the resilience of the wild. The hunter sees the hunger in its eyes. Its desire for flesh to eat is no more malicious than the mutations that have turned its tail into a scorpion's stinger, or the vines that constrict the trees around which they grow so tightly that the tree dies, or the fungi that grow into their victims' brains and kill them by bursting out through their skulls. It is the nature of humanity to see the fate the wild has in store for them, and cheat it. Here and now, the hunter is that cheat. "Stay out of my way," he shouts, the first words he has directed at the humans. He does not intend them as hostile. They are supposed to be a warning for the humans to keep their distance from the struggle. But they shrink away from him anyway with a new, sharper fear. He dismisses their reaction. There will be time enough to clarify things when he has dealt with the predators, and his primary purpose is to make them stay clear. He does not, at this point, particularly care what their rationale is for obeying him. He sprints at the wounded beast, which snarls and lashes out at him with its stinger. The hunter catches it behind the venom bulb with one hand, and rips the weapon off with the other. The predator howls again and wrenches backwards, and blood spurts from the severed trunk to spray across the hunter's faceplate, clogging and obscuring his eye lenses. He wipes at them, but hard, shiny armor can only smear fluids ineffectually. He can still hear the beasts around him, but hearing alone will not be sufficient to win him this fight. He drops the stinger and reaches up, pops the neck seal expertly, and removes his helmet. He throws it towards the human and shouts, "Clean that." He does not have time to see whether they scramble to obey his order or shrink from the helmet as though it were a grenade, because the now stingless beast is coming at him again. He steps slightly to the side and punches upwards. The uppercut crashes into its lower jaw and hits powerful enough to knock the beast off its feet and flip it over, causing the onrushing mass to miss him and come to a slumped halt in the leaf litter. The hunter pounces on it, seizes its head and wrenches, pitting his strength against the resistance of its neck muscle and spine. It is a brief struggle. The predator's neck snaps. When the hunter releases its head, it drops limply to the ground. That leaves 2. He picks up the severed stinger and moves to attack. The other beasts have disentangled themselves, not without a couple of snaps at each other, and spread to outflank him. The one with the severed tongue roars at him, which is its last mistake. The hunter hurls a stinger into its mouth, and the barb pierces the roof of it. The venom bulb discharges automatically, pumping toxin into its bloodstream. The creature stiffens, falls to the ground, and begins to thrash, no more immune to its packmate's venom than their prey would be. That leaves 1. The final predator charges the hunter, faster than even he is prepared for. It ducks its horned head low and swipes upwards at the last moment, hammering its weapons into his chest. He is lifted off his feet and sent flying gracelessly through the air. The ground and the sky rapidly swapping places as he tumbles. Perhaps he would have recovered his equilibrium sufficiently to land on his feet. Perhaps not, but the sudden intervention of a tree trunk renders it a moot point. He strikes hard enough to splinter the wood and falls to the ground. His armour has held, but it will not stand up to many more impacts of such force. He clambers back to his feet, a little short of breath, a little shaken, and with his heart's pounding. This, too, is a familiar sensation, but familiarity with mortal peril does not bring any guarantee of survival. Lessons can be learned and adjustments made, but each struggle is contested on its own merits. The predator has forgotten about the humans. Now it only has eyes for the hunter. This thing that has stepped on into its territory and challenged it. Whether it considers him to be a rival seeking to claim its food for himself, or some sort of alpha prey animal which can attack and hurt it, is of little consequence. The outcome will be the same. Only one of them can live. End chapter 2. Welcome, Why Am I Here, Tiger? I'm sorry, Dr. Cleric. I was very lucky. I tried my absolute hardest to get this book and a copy of The Lion's Guard. I literally just picked it up today on my way home from work. So I have Lionel Johnson there. I'm going to be building him on Wednesday evening. Hopefully I can get some magnets in time, because I want to magnetize the shield so that I can use him for 40k and 30k and Horus Heresy. But you can still get the book digitally, though I think all the physical copies, both of the limited and not limited edition, have sold out at the minute. It's also the #1 selling book on Amazon at the minute, which is kind of crazy. Like, literally the most popular book in the world right now. Welcome back, Why Am I Here, Tiger? I'm going to have a sip, and then we will continue with chapter 3. I like these chapters. They're not too long. They feel like they're nice little bites you can, like, really kind of sink your teeth into when, you know... Like, say if you're doing a short commute or something, you could get through a chapter or 2. It's really nice. The formatting of this book is fantastic. Show off the cover again, because it is just so very nice. I love this book. Mike Brooks has done a fantastic job writing this. Like, it just kind of pulls you forward and really kind of puts you in the scenes. Or at least it feels like it has. I'm very happy. I'm very happy that I was lucky enough to get this. Number 261 of 2,000 in the whole world. Yes. Okay. The beast comes for him again, head lowering and bellowing in rage. The hunter is better able to judge its speed this time, but he does not stand to meet it. He vaults into the air instead, inverted like an acrobat, just high enough to clear the monster's head. He reaches out and grabs the horns as they pass beneath him, then comes down astride the beast's shoulders. It takes the predator a few more strides to realize what has happened, and it bucks in an attempt to throw him off. This was all the time the hunter needed. He now has each horn firmly in his grip, and is forcing his hands apart. The beast's thrashing works against it, as it provides just enough additional force against the hunter's pressure to break one of the horns off. Halfway down, the hunter does not hesitate and reverses the grip on the piece of wickedly sharp keratin. As long as his forearm, it rams it into the monster's throat. Now the beast manages to shake him loose onto the leaf litter, but he tugs the piece of horn out with him, and dark blood follows it in a flood. The predator staggers, crashing into bushes as it tries to fight against the sensation of rapidly weakening limbs, all while its powerful heart pumps its life away. It lumbers back towards him, no longer as swift or as strong as it was, but still determined to kill this intruder. The hunter is not cruel. Twisted and mutated though this creature is, it is not malicious. It is merely an animal that had the misfortune to hunt humans in front of him. It does not deserve a lingering death. When it lunges clumsily for him, he sidesteps and brings the horn down as hard as he can on the front of its skull. His great strength and the horn's own sharpness pierces the bone and drives into the brain. And the beast drops dead. The hunter takes a moment to examine himself. The rush of battle can inure a combatant to the wounds they have suffered, but it appears that he is largely unhurt. He turns away from the corpse of his final kill and towards the humans. They have not moved. The child is sobbing quietly, evidently overcome by the horror and fear of what has happened. Two adults watch him with wide eyes. One of them holds out the hunter's helmet with trembling hands. The blood has been cleaned from it with leaves, and judging by the smears on the man's shirt, his own clothing. "Thank you," the hunter says, taking it. He does not place it back on his head. He feels that the humans will be more likely to respond better to a face they can see. A face that looks like a little like their own, even if it belongs to a being so large that the adults are like children in comparison to him. Where is this place? The adults gape, uncomprehending. Thunder wonders for a moment if they do not speak the same language as he does. Not that he knows what language he is speaking, nor how he came to learn it, but they clearly understood his instruction to clean the helmet. Perhaps his query was not specific enough. "What world is this?" he tries. "I do not know where I am." "Karmith, Lord," one of the adults manages. "Lord," that sparks something. A flicker of memory in the back of the hunter's mind. Not the name of the world, but the honorific. He has been addressed like this before, but he cannot pin down anything anymore. He schools down the expression of irritation that had begun to cross his face at his memory's failure. For even that hint of displeasure is enough to make the adults take a step back from him, shielding the child as best they can. They cannot think that they would protect either the child or themselves from him, should he wish them harm. But it is a human instinct, and one the hunter decides not to take as an insult. They know more about the surroundings than he does. Therefore, it might benefit the hunter to remain with them for now. He clamps the helmet onto his belt again. "What are your names?" "I am Sutik," says the taller of the two adults, nervously but clearly. "This is Halen and Bieber." He gestures at the other adult first, and then the child. The hunter nods to show that he has heard and understood. "What is your name, Lord?" Halen asks timidly. The hunter shakes his head. "I do not know. Perhaps it will come to me. Perhaps I will find a new one." He looks at the three of them again. "You are collecting wood? For a fire? Do you have a camp nearby? Are there others?" "Yes, yes, and yes," Sutik says, nodding and eager to please. We would be honored if you would come share our fire, Lord. I'm sure our protector would wish to meet you as well. Your protector, the hunter frowns. They do not appear to be fulfilling their role, else I would not have had to intervene. Oh, please don't say that, Halen says hurriedly. He is alone, and he cannot watch over all of us at all times, but he has saved us at one point or another since the world ended. The world cannot have ended, the hunter says. We stand here. Do you believe this to be an afterlife? He stops short, suddenly afflicted by doubt. Where was he before? Home, according to the Watcher. But that told him nothing. Faulty memory or not, it is not a landscape that quite matched with how he thought things should be. If anything, that had felt more like the sort of superstitious tales of worlds a soul might go to after death. This place, on the other hand, felt vivid and real. A figure of speech, Lord, Halen said, with an embarrassed glance at Sutik. This is not how our world was, until the sky opened and the bastards came. It was beautiful, Sutik puts in. That was before they twisted everything. The animals, the plants, even the stars. You'll see it for yourself when the sun goes down, which will not be long, the hunter says. Looking at the sky, he can tell that Karmath's sun had moved relative to the horizon. Even without his armor censored, most forests are more dangerous at night, and I doubt this one is different. How far is the camp? Not far, Halen assures him. Follow us, Lord, and we'll take you there. The hunter pauses for a moment as a new thought occurs to him. These humans are no threat. But what about their allies? Could Halen, Sutik, and Beaver be bait to lure him into a trap? He dismisses the idea. How could anyone be intending to trap him? How could they know where he was to set a trap? When he does not know for sure himself, why would anyone wish to hurt him? He has no context for this. And yet his distrust runs deep. He can feel it, like a hidden current surging beneath the surface of his consciousness. He has surely been hurt before, in the past, betrayed by those whom he considered close, and it has marked him severely enough that he carries the echoes of those wounds, even though he cannot remember the cause. Also, he is wearing armor. He can sense no deceit from the humans in front of him. It is hard to be sure, since they still stink of the fear that came over them when they realized that they were being hunted, and his presence is as alarming to them as his deeds have been reassuring. However, the hunter is as certain as he can be that they are not intentionally misleading him. Wait one moment, he says. He walks back to the body of the final predator beast, the horned and furred one. Does someone have a knife at your camp? He asks, pitching his voice over the shoulder. Yes, Lord, Sutik replies, although it is clear from the tone. He is uncertain why this question has been asked. Good, the hunter says. He reaches down, grabs the body, and heaves it upwards. The weight is immense, but so too is his strength. He strains and puffs, and he can hear warning chimes from the helmet at his waist, and it registers the stresses placed upon his armor, but he manages to haul the predator's body off the ground. Then, with a titanic effort, he jerks it higher still and settles it across his shoulders. Now he can carry it with the full strength of his back and his legs, and the weight is far more bearable. He returns to the three humans, and the faces of the adults leave him no doubt as to how incomprehensible they find this feat. Lead on, the hunter says. The journey is not far, just as Halen promised. As they progress, the hunter notices signs of habitation, not buildings, power lines, roads, or fields of crops, but other, more subtle indications. the noise of wildlife lessons, and what tracks and spoor he sees and smells grow fainter and older. It is obvious to him that this part of the forest has been hunted out. Not only that, but there is a marked absence of dead wood, which would partially explain why the humans with him were foraging so far afield for fuel. Why do you not cut down these trees for firewood? The hunter asks. Do you lack the tools? No, we can cut if we have to, but we're being hunted, and fresh gaps in the canopy lead the bastards right to us. It's safer to find dead wood, even if it means going far afield. It does not seem to be that safe, the hunter observed. It is still safer, Sutik says quietly. The hunter smells the camp before he hears it. The tang of wood smoke and the savoury scents of cooking food both hang heavy in the air still. And he hears it before he sees it, but neither by much. Halen and Sutik lead him around the bole of a particularly massive tree, and through a pathway between two dense shrubs, which the hunter judges were forced and worn over many years by the passage of larger and heavier animals than humans. And then the camp in front of him, such as it is. Sure enough, there is no clearing, save for underbrush which has been hacked away. The camp is spread out between tree trunks, apparently chosen for the thickest canopy of leaves overhead. This makes sense, since they will do the best job of dispersing the smoke from the few small covered fires, rather than letting it rise in an obvious plume that might attract attention. There are low, makeshift roofs of salvaged material or branches in the shadows beneath which the hunter's keen eyes detect meagre piles of cloth on which people might sleep, with something to protect them from the dampness of the ground, tree roots in the ribs, or the scuttling denizens of the leaf litter, even if such protection is more theoretical than practical. There are perhaps 100 or so people here. There is no singing, no laughing, no joking, no speech louder than absolutely necessary. Even the children are quiet, trudging around with lowered heads and dull eyes. This is not a community, the hunter realizes at once. Most people here are shut off inside their own heads, unwilling to indulge in the activities that would make them human for fear of bringing ruin down upon them all. The hunter has little desire for singing, laughing, or joking for himself. But he recognizes that for humans to shun such things is to doom themselves to a slow death. One of the soul, if not the body. These people have fled from death, but they are subconsciously waiting to die, simply because they have no other vision for their future. The hunter stops at the edge of the camp and shrugs the beast carcass off his shoulders. It lands on the ground with a dull thump, loud enough to snap up the heads of everyone nearby. Someone bring me a knife. I have a kill to skin, the hunter declares. Some shrink back from him, others press forward with open mouths, trying to simultaneously take in the concept of a dead predator this size, and the hunter himself, who is much larger and stronger than they are. The hunter hears a whisper passing through the crowd, repeated enough that he can make it out with certainty. It is one word: protector. As if summoned by the incantation, a new figure appears out of the shadows. It towers above the humans, near to the hunter's own height, and is clad in an armoured suit of deep but battered black, adorned with a silver trim. On his chest and on his left shoulder, a device stands proud, a winged sword. The hunter blinks as if his mind creaks and cracks, like glass walls finally giving in to the pressure of water from all around. Images flash through his head, too fast for even him to properly latch onto. A planet coming apart around him, a sword, or more than one, the shape and nature changing even as he tries to focus on it. or them, a monstrous bat-winged form, all sharp edges and leering teeth, battering at him with its mind, glowing golden presence, a different planet, this one viewed from far above, as death ordered by his hand descends upon it, as a rain of silver specks that look no larger than snowflakes, but which he knows are each the size of a hablock. And on and on and on, the black armoured shape, Space Marine, hisses through his teeth and draws two weapons, bolt pistols, and opens fire. Hi, Pink. Hi, Small. Oh, we've got some redeems. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry, I'm getting a bit too Oh, so you want me to flip you off, Small? Lol. Sorry, I've been very into my book. We're reading Warhammer 40,000. The Lion, Son of the Forest, which is a new book, a limited edition. I was lucky enough to get the limited edition copy. There's only 2,000 of these in the whole world. I am. Oh my god! Thank you so much for the gift, Subreaper. Sorry, I've been in my own world. Oh, you give this up to Metal as well. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I am loving this book. I'm very tired from work though. Have I read Furet by Glukowski? Future by Glukowski. I can't say that I have. I cannot say that I have. But yeah, we are doing the RTX thing today. Same author as Metro. I've heard very good things about Metro's storytelling. I for one do not know Metro. You wanted a thigh slap? Fine. We do the thigh slap. Oh, okay. I'm really enjoying this book. It belongs in a museum. It really does. Do you not think? I feel like it does. It's just, yeah. But it's better than Metro. Okay, I might give it a try. I like doing these reading streams. I don't do them often enough. I did like The Hobbit, and then I haven't done it, but this is something I'm really... I've wanted to see The Lion return since I was a child sharing a Dark Angels army with my dad, and it's just... The way they're doing it is really, really cool. But we've just met a new character now. Shall we continue? I should really give people shout-outs. Let me have a sip. We'll give people some shout-outs quickly. Because all of you are awesome people. Okay. What's the order I need to give people shout-outs? Let's do it from the start. There are many people. His name isn't Hunter. It's just... It's more describing him than naming him. Because... Yeah. He doesn't know his own name, so how could we? As it's being told from the first person. That's valid. Let's see. I'm very much getting into this book. I know I've turned off a lot of the sound alerts and things because I feel like it's important for this. I feel like it's important for book reading streams to be focused on the story. And it's a bit immersion breaking when like there's loads of like pings for subs and all that stuff going off. You know? And be sure to follow all of these lovely people. Hi, Gator. But Pink, you have a whole new bookshelf over here. Well, you will. Lol. When I get my new cabinet, this is going to go in the Warhammer section. Because obviously it should. It's such a pretty book, though, is it not? Like the texturing is amazing. Time to buy a bunch of books. Lol. Do it. Do it. Get all of the books. Real though, I'm really enjoying this book. I don't think I've ever been like so pulled into a book as I have been with this. Okay, you want the bean. We shall the bean. Gonna put that there because it's in the way. This is one of the art prints I got with the Lionel Johnson model. If you want to see another picture of our guy, he is our protagonist. He's right here. I also enjoy the reading. This is our protagonist. He's here. He's also here, so you can actually see his face now. This is him. I also picked up his model today. His model is super cool. Let me show it off for a second. I need to assemble and paint it, obviously. But here he is. Okay, that light is shining. Let me move that light. Get into focus. There he is. He's cool as hell. So the Wednesday stream is going to be building this guy, not the other guys. I'm going to pick the winged helmet. I'm going to pick the winged helmet, and I'm also going to magnetize his shield so that I can take it off for when I play 30k. I'm also going to magnetize the base because he has a smaller base for Horus Heresy than he does for 40k. I got the box and the limited edition book, Wenlock. This is number 200. Signed by the author. Number 261 of 2000 in the whole world. Yeah. I'm very happy. It's so pretty. Like, it's just like it's the prettiest. Yeah, they were sold out. Yeah, they sold out in like less than 5 minutes of opening the sale. And I put mine in my cart 5 minutes before they were officially supposed to go on sale because I read that you should try and get on 10 minutes early, and I did. And then I thought, you know what, I'll just refresh my search because it's 5/2, and you know, sometimes they put things up early. And then it was all there. And the website was crashing even before it got to this time it was supposed to go on sale. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. I just kept hitting refresh and trying to like buy the items, and then I got really, really lucky. I got so lucky. I feel very fortunate. I feel very, very fortunate. They also, these ones were like only one per customer, but you know there were lots of these have been picked up by scalpers, and if you go on eBay and look for this book, it's worth a lot of money. But obviously I'm not selling it, this is mine, I'm keeping it forever. I wonder if it's going to be part of a trilogy, because I feel like this leads directly, from what I understand, this leads directly into Arcs of Omen, the Lion, which I also just picked up today, which is like the campaign book for what's happening now. I wonder if there's going to be a sequel that follows on from this book, because the ending of this, from what I've heard, is very open as to where the story goes, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited. And yeah, yeah. Uh, I wanna, I wanna know. But we have a whole book to read. How many out of curiosity, how many like chapters are in is in how many chapters? There's no contents page, is there? There's a list of characters in order of appearance. Okay, so part 1. We're on chapter 4. If I skip ahead, oh god, there's a lot. Wait, when it says part 1, does that mean this is part 1 of a series? I think it is, because I'm not. I mean, even though there's part 2, no, because it all just goes on. Like the chapter numbers, they all just keep adding up. So maybe it's part of a series. That would be super cool. I really hope that this is part of the series. But yes, let's get back to the story. So, the Lion had met another space marine, and that space marine just pulled out guns and opened fire. My name is Zabriel, Terran-born of Stackholm Hive, Diakon of the Order of the Three Keys, Initiate of the Dreadwing, formerly the Host of Bone, Knight of the 2nd Destroyer Squad in the 3rd Company, 15th chapter of the 1st Legion. We who were once the uncrowned princes, we who were the Emperor's original angels of death, we who became the Dark Angels. I scouted the Oort Cloud while the younger legions were still being formed, cleansing dwarf planets and orphaned moons of Xenos creatures which will remain forever unnamed and uncategorized, under the weak light of a sun so faint it was merely another star. I fought the Rangda at Advex Moors and hunted their squalling remnants through the corridors of their ravaged war moon with my brothers. We ended them with bolt pistol and chain blade, rad missile and phosphex. I was part of the host who came to the aid of the 13th on Carcassonne and repaid our debt of honor to them on the bodies of the flesh gola, following the heels of the lion, he who would unify us and would sunder us once again. To be the 1st Legion was to be original, the greatest, the purest. We were the mold from which the other legions of Startus came, the base template from which they were adapted. Some of them might, in time, come to embody certain aspects of warfare more wholly than we did. But even their specialism was rooted in our ability. The White Scars did not invent swift warfare, any more than the Iron Warriors invented siegecraft, or the Wild Eaters invented shock assault, or the Lunar Wolves invented striking down the enemy's leadership. All these tactics, for which they became famed, were born in our hidden wars. As we brought the light of the Imperium into the darkest corners of the galaxy and burned away the infestations too horrific for humanity to even know had ever existed. Perhaps our expectations for the rest of the Great Crusade were too high. Perhaps we assumed that although our brother legions and their innumerable human allies were not told the specifics of our deeds, of the myriad of implacable enemies we had exterminated, they would still recognize what we must have done. Perhaps we thought that they would understand why we roved so far afield. Perhaps we credited them with the wit to comprehend that our tally of recognized compliances was so modest because we were exterminators, the Emperor's ultimate sanction, and our talents were not to be wasted on foes who might yield. Instead, those who followed in our footsteps began to forget why we had been so feared, and who had created the road down which they now travelled with such pomp and self-aggrandizement. The coming of the Primarchs changed things too, as was inevitable. They were the Emperor's true sons, the demigods of war. The legions as starters were mighty, but we had been intended to complement our gene fathers, not replace them. As other legions were reunited with their primarchs, those primarchs enhanced their gene sons not through additional technology or gene smithing, or at least not primarily, although the Iron Hands made no secret of their affinity for bionics. And there were always grim rumours about the World Eaters. But through their genius, Horus was the first and most feted, of course, for he was a commander and diplomat almost without peer. But as each Primarch was discovered, their legion was newly invigorated in turn. We were left behind. War had given us scars that ran deep, and saw us divided against ourselves as we fought the best way to reclaim our preeminence among those who had either forgotten or never known how we had shaped the galaxy for humanity. How could we compare, splintered as we were by the campaigning that saw us meet the galaxy's deadliest threats, which had cost us leader after leader? Meanwhile, the Ultramarines under Robert Gilliman rolled over human world after human world, welcomed as often as they were attacked, and carved out their own Imperium in miniature into their own glory. All that changed once the Lion was found. Just as we were the first and purest of the legions, the Lion was the first and purest of the Primarchs. Late found though he was, his mind was not diluted by a desire to seek the approval of others, his actions not weakened by instincts of diplomacy, his tactics untempered by pride. He was the embodiment of what we had always been, and what we had lost. In following and accepting him, we became ourselves once again. Not only did the galaxy quake once more at the First Legion, now known as the Dark Angels, but our allies within the Imperium found a respect for us they had lost in the intervening years. Everything went smoothly, of course. Those of the knightly orders of Caliban who ascended to our ranks had to be integrated, which was not a simple process. And not all of us veterans from Terra, Grammaire, and so on adapted easily to the changes the Lion made to the Legion's structures. Nonetheless, as his changes took hold we once again became a smooth blade, clean in form and function, but possessed of an inner structure and strength beyond the understanding of the casual observer. Then Sarosh happened. Even to those within the Legion, the events that unfolded were unclear. I knew that the traitorous Sarosi had been deceiving us, claiming that they had become loyal citizens of the Imperium, when in fact the opposite was true. I knew they had attempted to assassinate the Lion using an atomic warhead, and I knew that they had failed. I do not know why the Lion split the Legion after Sarosh. Some of us, myself included, were sent back to Caliban under the command of Luther, the Lion's former knightly brother, and the Legion's second in command. We were told that this was to manage recruitment from the world which had become the Legion's spiritual home in the eyes of many. But this explanation did not wash with many of us. It was the Lion's right to deploy us as he saw fit, of course, for he was our Gene Father and the Legion's master, and none could know better than he how best we could serve the Imperium. Nonetheless, it was plain that if any of us truly understood the logic, they were not happy with it. The First Legion had always been a place of secrets, of specialisms, and guarded knowledge. But that was simply our way. My own Order of the Three Keys never counted many more than 100 legionaries amongst its number. But if the Legion required us, then we would step forward with what we knew. I focused on my own ways of war, and trusted my battle brothers to have focus on theirs, each to be called upon as needed. However, knowing that others around you have knowledge that you do not, but which they will use for the good of all, is a very different prospect to not knowing whether anyone around you truly understands what is happening. This then may go some way to explaining why things on Caliban began to develop as they did. Another factor is the temperament of those involved, which travelled down two different but somewhat parallel paths. Those of my brethren who hailed from Caliban had largely come to our ranks directly from the knightly orders of that planet, or at least had an understanding of that culture. Theirs was a world on which brave warriors had ridden out to face down nightmarish beasts armed with weapons the Imperiums would have considered primitive, with the intention of either slaying their quarry or dying in the attempt. This was the First Legion's entire history, written in miniature. Having been shown the galaxy and the myriad of threats it still contained, against which their natures wished to set themselves, it truly rankled the Calibanites to return to their home, where the natural dangers had largely been removed by the sheer obstinance of the Imperium's colonization. For me, the other pre-Caliban veterans, things were a little different. I had no connection to Caliban. It was just a world, and neither a pleasant nor appealing one at that. I did not see the savage beauty the Calibanites sometimes did, nor could I appreciate it as a jewel of the Imperium. To me, it seemed to be caught halfway between two states, too dangerous and too treacherous to truly be an inspiration to humanity. Like such planets as Terra, or Macragge, or even the seat of occult learning that was Prospero, yet no longer somewhere that might appeal to the more poetic soul like Icy Fenris or the windswept Chogarus. I strongly suspected that I had been slaying the Imperium's enemies since before Luther himself was born. I had no wish to be stuck on the planet under his command, overseeing raw recruits while others tested themselves against the worst the galaxy still had to throw at humanity. Nor did I think it to be a good use of my skills and experience. This was a banishment, an exile from my gene father, which I had appeared to have earned through nothing more than my rank and squad in the Legion's order of battle. Therefore, presumably, my proximity to those whom I reported, rather than any action of my own. I could have resented my superiors for this association, but I had no knowledge of any misconduct of theirs either. This decision lay with the Lion. He gave us no explanation, and so, though we might be able to abide his orders, he left fertile ground for our own interpretations of them to take root. This was only compounded when Luther led a task force in the fight at Zaramund, and returned chastened by the Lion for defying him and stripped of our fleet. The message seemed clear. We were not welcome in the galaxy at large. The Dark Angels had never fought for glory, but even pride in our own actions was denied to us. What this would have come to had Horus's rebellion not occurred, I cannot say. Perhaps the Lion would have relented in time, finally forced to call upon the resources of the homeworld he seemed to have forgotten. Perhaps the Emperor would have intervened. Perhaps even one of the Lion's brothers might have drawn attention to the oddity of our situation. Noble Sanguinius, perhaps, whom it was said could read the hearts of others, and might have determined what had truly caused our Gene Father to abandon us. Or Gilliman, the Lord of the 13th, might have sought to increase our Legion's efficiency. And so at least commenced a conversation which the Lion had refused to have even given to have even with us, although I cannot imagine that it would have been a good-tempered one. However, Horus's rebellion did occur, although it was some time after the event, before we had heard of it. Even then, what were we to do? With no fleet, Luther did what he could to prepare us, as far as I could judge from my lowly position within our ranks, but no word came. Even betrayed by their own brothers, even with the galaxy in flames, the Dark Angels apparently still had no need of us. Rumours grew as time passed, and news trickled in. The Space Wolves had raised Prospero, Baal was under siege. It was not inconceivable that Caliban might come under attack, and some argued the Lion was leaving us in place to defend against that eventuality. However, as time wore on, it became less and less obvious from which side that attack might come. The Lion and the bulk of our legion had been in the galactic east, we believed well removed from the fighting. Those who had any sensitivity to the warp, Astartes or human, could tell the rest of us on Caliban that the Immaterium was in turmoil, treacherous for both communication and travel. Still, our Gene Father was single-minded when his duty required it of him, and ingenious. It was hard to accept that he might have been so thoroughly cut off that he could find no way to influence this war, and so doubt began to creep in. The Emperor had created us, and he had created the Primarchs, and had created the Imperium itself. It was his vision that sent us out into the stars to begin with, and his vision that we sought to bring about. However, he knew that he had returned to Terra, and he proclaimed Horus as War Master. The Lion knew only his role as humanity's ultimate defender. Was it so hard to imagine he might see Horus as the new champion of that, when the Emperor apparently with the Emperor apparently distracted by other matters? The Lion had kept his own counsel, even from us, on the meaning of our exile. We would have been fools had we assumed we knew the true intention with regard to this rebellion, what side he would take. We could not know. We did not know. When the rebellion concluded and the ships of the Lion's contingent of the First Legion finally found their way into Caliban's skies once more, Luther had us prepared for anything. We did not wish to meet our battle brothers with bolter and blade, but we knew it was a possibility. Had we truly been kept here for so long simply because of a slight, real or imagined, suffered by the Lion at some point decades in the past? Had that exile, for whatever reason it had begun, been turned into an unknowing garrison of the Lion's homeworld to protect it from the threat of Horus and his allies? Or had the Lion turned against Terra in truth, and feared that had he allowed us out into the galaxy, we would have gone against him and stood with the forces of the Emperor? I still do not know who fired the first shot. I saw and heard our defense batteries open up, spitting plasma and las fire skywards, and although ours is a stoic legion, hope died in my chest that day. By this point, nothing was clear, not even the disposition of our leaders, for there had been quarrels amongst them, and purges ordered of some who were deemed traitors. However, whatever doubts I might hold, I could not imagine that Luther or his lieutenants would open fire on the Lion without provocation. I had been present when the First Legion killed worlds, and there was nothing about Caliban which would save it from that fate should those above us choose to enact it. Attacking first was to bring a death sentence down, and if there was one thing which our leaders chafing at the restrictions imposed showed us, it was that they had ambitions beyond dying on that world. The only conclusion I could draw was that the Lion had returned to destroy us, because he feared we would stand in opposition to his allegiance, whichever way that lay, or would in some way incriminate him to his remaining brothers, now that he had no excuse to keep us isolated. How he thought we would do that I did not know, but as fire rained down on us, and landing craft fell from the sky bearing our battle-scarred brethren, such considerations became irrelevant. I had fought for the Emperor. I had fought for humanity. I had fought for the First Legion, and I had fought for my brothers. Now I fought against them, simply in order to survive. We took what shelter we could in the fortress monastery, which had once been home of the Lion's own order, protected as it was by powerful force fields. But they were of little use when the Dark Angel's bombardment began to break the planet apart. And still our brothers came. So determined were they to see us dead, that they came even even as Caliban itself died around them. I'm glad you guys like my voice when I'm reading. And yeah, we are reading The Lion, Son of the Forest by Mike Brooks. I was very fortunate enough to get this limited edition copy. There's only 2,000 of these in the world, Zero. I'm very happy. I think we'll do one more chapter, and then I'll need to get ready for bed because I have work in the morning. And now that we've had that intermission, we pick up the scene that came before. Chapter 5. Baylor calmly placed a fresh magazine into his bolt gun, heedless of the heavy slug shotgun fire hammering into the corner of the bulkhead behind... Oh, it's a different scene. Behind which he waited. The auto-cycling mechanism whirred and clicked a shell into place, just as it had done for hundreds of years. Baylor had not been the first recipient of this weapon, fresh from the forges. It had never been... Baylor had been the first recipient of this weapon. Fresh from the forges, it had never betrayed him. And he had never dishonoured it, unlike some he could mention. What are you waiting for? Markov demanded from beside him. The green-armoured giant reeked of heavy incense. Baylor did not know if it was his breath, his sweat, or something produced by his armour, nor did he wish to know. Markov and his Dolores Guard were effective. There was no doubt of that, but Baylor did not share their view that the changes wrought upon them were gifts. They seemed weak, to have lost their grip on their former nature, and they seemed young, so young. Everyone in this god-forsaken galaxy seemed young. They are not only wasting ammunition, they are only alternating their fire. They are not only wasting ammunition, they are also not alternating their fire efficiently, informed Markov. More than half will be reloading their weapons, he counted down in his head. Now he stepped out. The gun barrels of the ship's defenders tracked him, but he had timed his movements correctly. Most of the 20 or so baseline humans in the corridor in front of him were reloading their combat shotguns. They were doing so efficiently and quickly, leaving only a few seconds in which the output of fire was diminished. But a few seconds was a yawning gulf of opportunity for a space marine. He targeted the firers first, dropping half a dozen with shots in the space of half as many seconds. So quickly that an unenhanced observer might have considered it more likely that the humans had simply exploded than fallen victim to the same weapon wielded by the same warrior. Then he charged the rest. A solid shotgun round slammed into his left pauldron, but the curved ceramite deflected the shot into the wall. This sort of ammunition would make a mess of most boarders, but it lacked the penetrative power to seriously trouble Mark IV power armor. A direct hit to the faceplate of his helmet might be a problem, but none arrayed against him had sufficient accuracy or reflexes to manage that before he closed with them. He struck with fist, elbow, and foot, breaking their weak bodies like blows that struck like pneumatic hammers. He did not slow, but ploughed straight through them, destroying those in his way. The untouched remainders at the edges, who had escaped both his bolter and his fist, turned to follow him with instinctive movements of a flock of prey animals tracking a hunter. Markov came into the back of them, swinging his long-handled axe. Heart-drinker, with consummate grace. Such was his reach and the length of his weapon. He did not need to step either right or left as he followed Baylor's path through the centre of the corridor's narrow confines. The commander of the Dolores Guard slew the remnants, and the strange pale metal of his axe head drank up the blood until it was shining and clean once again. Sloppy, Baylor commented, looking down at the corpses. They were robed in dark green with gold trim. Chapter serfs, Markov grunted, His unnaturally long tongue flickered out to mop up the drops of blood that had spattered onto his face, and he shuddered with delight at the taste. Only human. Still sloppy, Baylor said. He activated his vox. Knight Captain, you will address him as my Lord Seraphax, Markog growled. Shut up, Markog, Baylor said, ignoring the giant's silent snarl. Knight Captain, Baylor, is your level secure? Seraphax's voice slid through the vox like an electric serpent. He had always had a good voice, even back as an adept on Caliban, and his ascension to the ranks of the Space Marines had not changed that. It had merely deepened it and enriched it. Seraphax spoke with the same casual mastery with which a blade master worked his forms. No detail missed, no misstep or error in pacing. Everything apparently effortless and unhurried until the observer was mesmerized. He had ruled the world of Bast for a century off the back of his voice and his sorcerous gifts. The Order of the Pentacle had nurtured those until the Council of Nicaea, but Seraphax had moved far beyond that now. And where he moved, Baylor moved with him. Loyalty was a strange beast. Baylor had followed Seraphax when he had been a mere company captain, one of many such officers within the ranks of the First Legion, and he followed him now. Baylor was a warrior, but he knew that he lacked vision. He would fight what was placed in front of him, and he would fight it well. But grand strategic understanding was not his strength. The how he could manage, the why was something he had always left to others. All resistance so far has been eliminated, Knight Captain, he acknowledged. Seraphax had never demanded that Baylor address him by anything other than the title he carried on the day Caliban died. Baylor had never wished to. Glory to the 10,000 eyes, Markog added. Good. Proceed to the reliquary, Seraphax instructed. But Baylor could practically hear the Sorcerer Lord's remaining eye-rolling at Markov's fervency. Yes, Knight Captain, Baylor acknowledged. He did not look at Markog, but could feel the giant's displeasure. He let it slide off him. Annoying Markog was one of the minor pleasures Baylor took outside of his duty. Pretending that it was incidental rather than calculated only made the whole thing more enjoyable. Come, Commander. That was another little jibe. Markov was the commander of the Dolorous Guard, the remnants of those Space Marines who had once been the Ashen Blades until chaos had ensnared them. They were Seraphax's personal bodyguard, but instead of being with his lord, Markov had been assigned to assist Baylor. Baylor knew that Markov resented his presence within the 10,000 eyes, resented his close relationship with Seraphax, resented his longevity, and resented the authority he carried, not on the basis of any rank he held, but for who he was. Baylor was not Lord Sorcerer, he was not a commander, he was not an arch-raptor, or the Lord Celebrant, or the Unshriven. He was simply Baylor, sometimes known as the Impostor, counted among the fallen by fools and amongst the deadly by the wise. His word was second only to Seraphax's in the warband, and there was nothing Markog could do about it. He could kill Baylor, of course, or at least he could try. Baylor had felt the giant's eyes sizing him up more than once, but Markog had always thought better of it. Perhaps he did not trust that he was Baylor's equal, size and heart-drinker notwithstanding, or perhaps he had not yet conceived a manner of death which would not leave him the obvious culprit, and therefore the target of Seraphax's vengeance. Even the Ashen Blades themselves had not known the origin of their gene seed. It seemed Baylor suspected that it was not from a lineage with any subtlety to its name. However, sometimes subtlety was unnecessary, so it proved when the doors of the Gravelift they were approaching opened to reveal a massive gold-armored figure. It was a Terminator of the Angels of Vigilance, the chapter whose strike cruiser the 10,000 Eyes had ambushed, a stormbolter in his right hand, and its left a massive power fist, already crackling with energy. It was not as tall as Markog, but it must have matched him for bulk. And its armour was substantially thicker. Of all the foes to encounter, it was perhaps the worst. One of the primary uses of tactical dreadnought armour was for close-quarter fighting in confined spaces such as void ships' corridors. Markog flew at it with a melodic snarl, Heartdrinker a pale blur as it swept towards the Terminator's helmet. The Terminator's power glove flashed up and swat the giant's blow aside, and the Angel of Vigilance levelled his Stormbolter at Markog's chest. Markog seized the weapon and twisted it just enough for the mass reactive shells to explode in the wall behind him, instead of his breastplate. He tried to backhand the Terminator with Heartdrinker, but the Angel of Vigilance grabbed the haft in its power fist, and a strange radiance filled the corridor as the disruptor field warred with the arcane forces residing in the ancient axe. The two behemoths lumbered around in a half circle, servos whining as each tried to overpower the other, but found themselves equally matched. Balor stepped up calmly, dropped to one knee, waited for Markog's attempt to tear Heartdrinker out of the Terminator's reach, to pull the Imperial's arm upward, and fired 3 times into the vulnerable armpit revealed. Even Terminator armor had joints, and joints were weak spots. The bolts punched through heavily reinforced plast flex and thundered into the Space Marine's sternum, detonating within. The Angel of Vigilance staggered, yet, with superhuman determination and resilience, it still fought. Heartdrinker slipped out of his grasp, and the Imperial had enough energy to drive its power fist into Markog's chest before the giant could bring his axe down. Markog stumbled backwards and fell to the floor with a clatter of ceramite on metal, his breastplate a smoking ruin. Balor rose to his feet and fired again. The Terminator's faceplate was the other obvious target of the armor, and unlike the serfs who he had so recently killed, Balor had the reflexes, marksmanship, and ammunition to make his shots count. The Angel of Vigilance's golden helmet shattered, and the head within followed suit. Limbs collapsed like a puppet with strings cut, and the veteran crumpled into an undignified heap on the deck. Balor looked around. Markog was picking himself up again. His chest and armor, if the two were even separate anymore, reforming themselves out of the green vapor the power fist had blasted into them. The giant's eyes glowed, and he gave a shuddering sigh of pleasure as his reconfiguration completed. Then his gaze travelled to the corpse of the Imperium, and his long tongue slithered out between his lips. Later, Balor told him sternly, "If the Lord Sorcerer says you may. We still need to get to the reliquary." Markog snarled, but after a moment he reset his jaw and nodded, somewhat resentfully. Killing the servants of the shell that still called itself the Imperium was one thing. Eating the flesh afterwards was, in Balor's opinion, quite another. The reliquary of the strike cruiser Dread Sentinel was high-vaulted and dimly lit. Balor's eyes could pierce the gloom without trouble. It must have been Stygian indeed, for the serfs whose task it once was to tend this place. That would certainly explain the unlit candelabras that lay around, their contents scattered between corpses of those who would have just used them. "Ah, Balor," Seraphax said, turning to greet them. "Do come in, Commander. You may remain outside at present. Liaise with the rest of our forces and ensure that there are no pockets of resistance." "Of course, Lord Sorcerer," Markog said, bowing his head with his hand on his chest. closed the door, but Baylor caught the glare the giant shot his way. As ever, Markog pinned the blame on Baylor, not Seraphax. On Caliban, Seraphax had been a fair-faced youth with hair the colour of hungry flame and pale cheeks that greeted the sun's rays with a profusion of freckles. Much like his voice, his ascension to Space Marine had not eclipsed his grace, merely altered it. He had never been spoken of in the same terms as someone like Lucius of the Emperor's Children, but Baylor had always considered that among the warriors generally considered to be bluff-featured and with facial proportions slightly different from the norm, Seraphax occupied a halfway ground between human and transhuman. His face still held some of the beauty of his youth, a history where he had come from, but altered into something that was never the less than striking. Now, some 10,000 years later, by the galaxy's reckoning, though markedly less as Baylor and Seraphax had experienced it, Seraphax's visage had gone beyond striking. Now his hair was hungry flame in truth. Along with the left side of his face, no part of his body was consumed by the fire, but he gave no indication that it pained him. But Baylor could see the faint heat haze shimmering above his knight captain's head. Such was the price of dealing with the warp, the price of what must be done to achieve their goal. Baylor had marked no such changes in himself, not even at the smallest level, and Seraphax had promised to tell him if he noticed any. But the love Baylor bore for his commanding officer was still slightly shadowed by those concerns these days. I know that aspect. What ails you, my friend? Seraphax asked. The fervent blade, a long knife of ancient and unknown origin, hung at his hip. In its scabbard of human skin, and he carried his staff of dark metal, which was topped with an Eldari witch's skull engraved with a cuneiform script. Baylor had long ago given up looking at the skull. It hurt his eyes. Markog's appetites are growing stronger, Baylor said. It was not only the only thing that bothered him, but it was the easiest to voice. He craves the flesh of others more and more, particularly other Astartes. Such are the demands of the Prince of Pain and Pleasure, Seraphax sighed. Markog drinks of Slaanesha's boons, and they do not come without price. These are poor tools with which to bring the galaxy to heel, Baylor muttered. He reached out and ran an armoured finger down the cover of a battered grimoire standing proudly on a lectern. He had no idea what significance it had for the angels of vigilance. It was not a weapon, and therefore it was not his concern. Markog is powerful, Seraphax said. In what way is he a poor tool? Because he is not your tool, Baylor said, turning to address the knight captain, face to burning face. Not fully. He is enthralled to another power, commander of the Dolorous Guard or not. His loyalty will always be in question when he is sworn to a god. Seraphax smiled with the half of his mouth that was still visible. God, I remember the days when you would not use that word. Baylor sighed. So do I. They were simpler times. The times were not simpler, Seraphax corrected him gently. We were. We did not understand our place or our potential. You and I are on the path to correcting that. The sorcerer swung his staff casually, and the plexiglass in front of the cabinet shattered under the impact of the carved Eldari skull. Another skull lay inside. This one, the distinctive shape and size of a space marine. It was layered with gold leaf. Seraphax muttered something under his breath, and the gold began to melt and drip away, leaving the bone beneath unharmed. Another Psycho Skull? Baylor guessed. Well, if our enemies will keep leaving them lying around, Seraphax said with a chuckle, then sobered. This is not a macabre obsession, my friend. With the warp in such turmoil, anything which holds a memory of strong connection to it is invaluable. Abaddon has set the Imperium raging, and only his close allies are protected from its talons. I need to shield and guide us, he paused, and his remaining eye narrowed as he looked at Baylor. What? Baylor shook his head, embarrassed at having been caught doubting. I'll follow you anywhere, you know that. But what makes you think you can succeed where Abaddon has failed? The 10,000 eyes is a mighty force, but it is a flyspeck against what Abaddon commands, and the Despoiler was rightly praised as a general and tactician back when things were different. That was then, Seraphax said simply. Abaddon fights blinded by hatred and malice. The sons of Horus were always too bombastic and full of themselves, and that has only worsened over time. The Dark Angels, in contrast, always had purpose, then as now. He picked up the skull and regarded it at eye level, then tossed it into the air. Instead of falling to the deck, it began to orbit him in a slow, lazy loop. Our tools may be unorthodox, powerful though they are, but we will use them to reshape the galaxy. As our Primarch taught us, we will not rest until our quarry is destroyed. So long as you are by my side, my brother, we will succeed. Seraphax reached out and took hold of the back of Baylor's neck. Baylor bent forward slightly, and Seraphax touched his lips to Baylor's forehead. Just like all the other times, the fire did not burn him. Okay, so I think we've been introduced at this stage to most of the characters. Hi, Miriam! And welcome back. This is a really good book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's just a good read. It makes me want to read more. Like, I don't want to stop reading it. Which is kind of annoying, because, like, I got work. And I can't stay up till, like... It's a big book. I can't, like... We're about... I want to say about 10% through it. It's a big book. Certainly the biggest I've read in a while. And we will get through it eventually. Oh, and I'm so glad I got this. I'm good, thank you, Miriam. I am kind of tired, and I think it's time to get ready for bed. I'm gonna continue streaming this book reading at a later date. I'm going on holiday for the weekend. Tomorrow we're gonna do our usual Tuesday Elden Ring. And on Wednesday I'm gonna build Lionel Johnson. Wait, you guys can't see it. I'm gonna build Lionel Johnson. It's gonna be really cool. He's the main character of this book. It's gonna be a really cool model kit. I'm very excited. Yes. Let me give Bex a shout out. This has been a very comfy chill stream. But how are you doing, Miriam? I think it is... Oh, I forgot to ping my own Discord that we'd start the stream. Well, fail. It's fine. They got an auto notification anyway. Right at the start. In the meantime, let's see who's doing something comfy and chill on my raid list. We could go grimdark or we can go super chill. I'm not sure which I want. Kisses to the forehead of the bean. That's cute. I think I will raid Scott, who is a lovely bean. A lovely, lovely bean. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I'm really excited to keep going through this book. I'm going on holiday over the weekend, so stream schedule for next week isn't finalized yet. We'll probably do this instead of our hobby stream because Friday we've got work, so we won't have time to do a full paint session. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll probably pick up not next week Friday, when I get back from my holiday with which chapter are we on? Chapter 6. Yeah. I'm really excited to see what's happening next. It looks like this is continuing the fight that the hunter had with the space was just started. That the fight that just started when last we saw the hunter back in chapter 3, I think it was chapter 3. Yeah. But yeah. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, wherever you're in the world. I love you all. Bye. Mwah.